book and share um, try to get more people to tune in. Go to this website, Facebook page, I'm sorry.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, everybody. Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Brian Anthony Campbell, the president and founder of Adimu Men of Excellence, and we want to welcome each and every one of you to tonight's edition of Man Up, a men's empowerment series sponsored and hosted by Adimu Men of Excellence Incorporated. Before we get started tonight, I want to take this opportunity to ask all of our participants, those of you who are in the Zoom room, or if you're watching us on live stream on Facebook or on YouTube, I want to invite you and ask you actually at this time to share the live stream so that we can get as many people as possible exposed to this great information tonight to join the conversation. So I want you to just take a couple of seconds and hit that share button if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. This is some critical information, a critical conversation that we need to have tonight. And we are hoping that it will definitely be a blessing to all of those who are joining us tonight and anyone who should watch this in the future. And so we just want to encourage and invite you to please go ahead and hit that share button to share this live stream broadcast tonight. It's good to see all of our Adimu alumni and current members that are attending tonight in the Zoom room, and those who are watching online on our Facebook page and Facebook group. We appreciate each and every one of you young men for supporting Adimu as always, and we appreciate your presence tonight. And to all of our other friends who are joining us tonight, again, thank you so much for supporting this organization. And so I just want to, again, just give people a few more minutes, a few more seconds actually, to go ahead and hit that share button. Let's try to get as many people as we can connected to this empowerment series tonight so we can share this information with as many people as possible. So please go ahead and hit the share button. And while you're doing that, just a little bit about our organization. Adimu Men of Excellence is a young man's character building organization that I founded 21 years ago, March 2000, at Blanche Ely High School in Pompano Beach, Florida. Our mission is to develop a rare group of young men who exemplify respect, responsibility, brotherhood, and leadership. And so what we do is sponsor different activities and educational experiences to help to develop young men of character. And so over the years, since the year 2000, we've had over 200 young men who have made the commitment to strive for excellence in their lives. And so we're so proud of all of our 200 plus alumni who have come through this organization. And we have our chapter at Blanche Ely High School, which is where we began. We also have a chapter at Silver Lakes Middle School in North Lauderdale, and we have a chapter in Los Angeles, California, started by one of our alumni as well. So we're just about trying to help these boys to become great men. And so we definitely appreciate your support and your prayers. If you want to find out more about Adimu, feel free to visit our website at adimu.org. And there you will find out about our history and what we are all about. And how you can support this great organization that is committed to developing young men of character. And so we just appreciate each and every one of you tonight. Tonight, we are coming together to focus on what I believe is a critical topic that we don't give as much attention to as we should. And that's the issue of mental health, especially as it relates to men. And I just want to share some statistics with you before we begin our conversation tonight. Statistics show that about 1 in 5 Americans struggle with a mental illness in any given year, regardless of their race. African Americans' depressive occurrences are more disabling, persistent, and resistant to treatment than those experienced by whites. African Americans are 20% more likely to have serious psychological distresses than whites are. Depression is one of the most common mental health problems in the United States, affecting more than 17 million people each year. African American men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide than African American women are. And I'm sure all of us know someone that we know for sure, or we know is struggling with mental illness, especially men. And so tonight we have come together to discuss this particular topic and hope that it will help some men and some boys, young men and older men, to find the hope, the help, and the healing they need to deal with mental illness. And so tonight we have an outstanding panel of men assembled tonight from various backgrounds who are going to be helping us to have this conversation. And so I want to introduce them at this time. First, I want to introduce Ruben Holloman. Ruben Holloman is a behavioral health clinician for the Sexual Assault and Human Trafficking Division of Broward County. He is happily married and the father of 2 daughters. He is a member of Phi Beta Sigma Incorporated. He also writes a Christian apologetics blog. And he said he is a proud member of the Hope Church of Christ in Hollywood, Florida, where Brother Alvin L. Daniels Jr. is his senior minister. Good evening, Ruben. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And as a matter of fact, just so you guys know, I'll make this little note. Ruben Holloman is on daddy duty tonight, so he'll be in and out. He'll be muted with us, but hey, we just appreciate you for being here, Ruben. Next, we have Dr. Benjamin Roberts. This is a great friend of mine. We appreciate this gentleman for being here tonight. He has a serious background, an extensive background and experience in the mental health field. He is, since May of 2010, he has been a military and family life consultant at Fort Campbell in Kentucky. He's also in private practice as a licensed marital and family therapist in Tennessee, where he conducts workshops, seminars for churches and businesses. And he is also the pulpit minister of the West Eastland Church of Christ in Gallatin, Tennessee. And that's how I've gotten to know this great brother. He is definitely a friend of mine and a friend of our congregation here in Pompano Beach, Florida. And so we are welcoming tonight. Good to have you, brother Ben Roberts. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you so much. It's a privilege and an honor to serve in this capacity this evening, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. Right. Thank you, Brother Campbell.
Great. Thank you. Next, we have Ruben Roberts. Ruben Roberts was on our panel last week. And I said, you know what? I want to give him a better introduction than we did on our first conversation. Ruben Roberts is the founder and CEO of RER Consulting, LLC, a professional development, evaluation, training, and management services firm. They work closely with local governments to build stronger communities. He has over 25 years of knowledge and experience in helping youth and families in underserved communities. He serves as the first vice president of the Miami-Dade NAACP. He is also a member of the Circuit 2 Juvenile Justice Board of Miami-Dade. And again, he has an extensive background in serving the community. Welcome back, Ruben Roberts.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me. Just a little update on the information. I'm the immediate past president of the Miami-Dade branch of the NAACP. But I really enjoyed our discussion that we had last week, and I'm looking forward to really participating in this much needed discussion with this great lineup of panelists that you have today. Thank you for putting this on. This is a much needed conversation, and it's something that I really appreciate that we're doing for ourselves. This is for the community by a community member, and I really appreciate you for doing this.
All right, thank you. And last but not least, Dr. Antoine Thurston. He is a young man that I've known since his high school days. He is a state coordinator for the Young Men of Valor mentorship program. He's a licensed minister and elder. He is a motivational speaker and mentor and an author. In 2020, he released his book entitled My Bondage and My Freedom, From the Mental Institution to the Pulpit. And in this book, he chronicles, he shares his story of his struggle with mental illness and how he was able to find hope, help, and healing. Good evening, Antoine. How are you doing tonight?
I'm fantastic, sir. I'm fantastic. It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to be a panelist on this discussion that's very much needed.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you if you would go ahead and if you can turn your cameras on. I want people to see some faces besides mine. If you're able to turn your cameras on so that people can get a chance to see your faces and know who is talking tonight. So if you can, go ahead and
can you enable us? Enable us to turn.
I can do that. I forgot I had to do that. All right, let me see how I can get this going here. Let's see. Let me see. I remember how I did that last week. Let's see how I can do it this week. You go ahead and try it now.
Still unable to.
Right. Oh, I got you. There you go, Ruben Roberts. Let me see if I can get the rest of the crew here. I want them to see some other folks besides me. Antoine, go ahead and give it a shot.
All right, I'm here.
All right. All right, Brother Roberts. All right, great. And
I feel doubly honored because you got two brothers that have my name. You got one Brother Roberts, and then you got one Brother Ruben on there.
There we go. There's everybody. All right. Now we can see. You know, we got to get used to this Zoom technology, man. But it's good to have each one of you. It's good to see each one of you as well. And I'm going to jump right into this conversation. And where this is going to work for our audience tonight is I'm going to begin the conversation with some general questions that we've developed. And the panel, we're going to discuss these questions. And if any of our attendees or any of our people who are watching on live stream online, if you have any comments or questions that you want to pose to the panel, if you're in the Zoom room, please put them in the chat so that we can recognize those questions. The last 15 minutes, if we have any questions from the audience, we're going to pose those questions at that particular time. So please put your questions in the chat if you're in the Zoom room, and you can put the questions in the comment section if you're watching online. And so I want to start out this conversation with a simple question. How do you define mental wellness? How do you define mental wellness? How do I know when I'm doing well mentally? What does that mean? Now we can start this with whoever wants to take it on. Go right ahead.
Yes, I would like to start. I always define mental health or mental wellness in a physical aspect. Just like we all have a physical health, physical body. When you are physically healthy, you can do your everyday junctures, you can do everyday activities, and there are no disability, there's no hindrances and so forth. Now, by having a physical body, you will get sick, you will hurt yourself. That's just a part of life. You're going to get some scrapes along the way, you're going to fall. Things are going to happen. That's just part of having a physical body. But the physical body must be maintained. It can't be ignored when there are troubles and pains and aches. You can't ignore it. You have to treat it, or else it can get worse. And so that's the way I define mental health, by using a physical analogy of the physical body.
All right, thank you.
I tune in. Antoine, I think that's a really great definition out, and I like that, especially being when you're working with people who suffer with addiction all the time. Mental health wellness is referred to as mental health hygiene. And just as Mr. Thurston was explaining, oftentimes whenever you when you think about your hygiene, you have a mental hygiene, you have a physical hygiene, you have a spiritual hygiene. And all a part of having a hygiene, it comes into play of making sure that you maintain self-care. All the time, as Mr. Thurston was bringing out, we incur physical injuries all the time. Whether it's that or we fall, we bump our knee, we break a leg, we do whatever, we incur physical injuries. You break a leg, nobody ever tells you, Brother Campbell, to get up and go walk. No, if you break a leg, it's impossible for you to walk.
Exactly.
Now, the dilemma is all the time when we have a mental injury, we don't treat it the same way. We just keep pushing, and we incur numerous mental injuries all the time. Whether it's rejection is a big one, that are shame, that are grief, that are loss. We incur mental injuries every day. But a lot of times we just keep going. We just keep pushing because society, the way that society is built. And so I want to get some other people some time to talk. But yeah, when you talk about mental hygiene, I like what Mr. Thurston has also said. I always compare it to the physical also because it does hold a similar component as do the physical.
Right. Well, I just want to take a stab at it. How do you define mental wellness?
All right, I'll take a stab at it. I mean, one of the things, and I think that the two comments before are definitely on point, but we look at, one's ability to cope with stresses of day-to-day life, maintaining the ability to function. And that's when you're looking at mental health. Mental health really affects you in terms of your psyche. How do you function on a day-to-day basis? How are you able to deal with stressors that are coming before you? And we all have stressors. We all have incidents where, things may happen that you don't expect. How do you resolve those issues? And so when you talk about mental health, you got to think about that. If you have difficulty dealing with those issues, then that's an issue. Now, one of the things I want to say to try to normalize it, and this is key, the DSM-5, I'm sorry, I'm dating myself. The DSM-5 is a diagnostic tool for those who are in the field, who use to diagnose folks with some sort of mental orders or what have you. But every human being can find a diagnosis that suits them in the DSM-5. So I want everyone that's listening to this to don't think that you excluded from any type of mental disorder. Every human being, if you read that DSM-5 from cover to cover, can find something in there that fits you personally. So one of the things that we look at is how do you do the adjustments? How do you handle with stress? And what's going on when you are stressed out in a situation and you just do not have the coping strategies, or you're struggling with those coping strategies in terms of how do you make the adjustments to deal with a particular stress at hand.
Thank you. Go ahead, Brother Roberts.
Absolutely. I think what's been stated has been stated very well. When you look at, as Ruben was stated, when you look at psychopathology, it's all on a continuum. And the key word that jumps out is impairment. How impaired are you in your everyday functions in life? What may be impairing to one may not be impairing to others. So it's on a continuum, and when you start looking at psychopathologies, when you start looking at diagnosis, it's a continuum. And the key word becomes how impaired am I in my everyday dealings with life? How impaired am I in relationships? How impaired am I in my job and functioning at my place of work? How am, it's the impairment is the word that stands out. This word impairment. How impaired am I? And is it working for you? Is life working for you? If it's not working for you, then there's some impairment. And what part of life is not working for you? Where in life is not working for you? And what needs to happen for life to start working for you. So I think that the definitions that's been stated here are very much on point. The impairment. So yeah. How well are you functioning in everyday life? How well are you functioning in everyday life? So
exactly.
And that's a continuum, you know. It's on a continuum. How well are you functioning? How impaired are you? And we can overlook it, as Brother Holloman was saying. We can overlook it, but it won't go away. It'll just get worse, and the impairment will get greater in our lives to the point that it will start causing some serious issues for us. So yeah.
And you use the word that I want to talk about now, overlook. Why do you believe that men's mental health, especially among Black men, has often been overlooked? Why is that the case? And I think we kind of talked about some of the stigma and other things associated with it. But why is it that folks, in particular men, struggle with the topic of mental health and mental illness?
Well, it's a complex situation, and so there's a lot of variables that are involved in it. It's not as simplistic as we think. But let me say this: one variable is that we don't know we're sick. I mean, that's a variable. Like I say, it's very complex. I don't want to make it very simple, but because it is complex. One variable that stands out a lot is that we don't know we're sick. See, here's what happens: we have been traumatized.
Right.
Many of us were traumatized very early. Well, here's the thing: that becomes what we call an implicit memory. Okay, and when we start talking about implicit memories, those are memories that are on the unconscious. So we're really sick and don't know it. We just acting out on the sickness that has become normal for us. Okay, that has become very normal for us. See, these implicit memories don't show up as memories. They show up as strong feelings. So that's why I get so angry, and I don't know. That's why I'm so depressed. It's because that memory is an implicit memory. It's showing up as a feeling. And that's what's so confusing, because that feeling has been showing up for so long in my life that it's just part of me, and there's nothing wrong with me. I just at times cause problems for myself. So one of the variables in this very complex, why do especially perhaps African-American men, it's because it's a very complex situation. And one of the variables, just one of the variables, is that we have lived with the pain for so long, we think we ought to live with it. Yeah. And it's destroying our families, it's destroying our children, it's destroying our churches, and it's destroying us. But we think we ought to just live with it because it's been there for so long. Those implicit memories of being traumatized as a child, they don't show up as daddy beat me half to death most of the time. They don't show up like that. They just show up, I ain't gonna let nobody else beat me.
That's it right there.
They show up as triggers.
That's it.
Yeah, Doc.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add anything to that one?
Hey, he covered it, but I mean, think about it. I mean, when you look at it since 1619, all right? I mean, every man wants to be, I mean, we are taught to be providers and protectors. You think about it. Think about what we've experienced as Black men in this country, in this world. Think about all of the injustice that we've experienced. You know, if your son is murdered by police, what protection can you offer to your son or daughter? What protection can you offer? They tell you to go to school, they tell you to, get your credentials and that sort of thing, and still you get underpaid. You're not treated as human. You're still treated as subhuman. You live in communities that people don't respect, right? And so at the same time, you're supposed to be this protector and the provider, but everything around you, right, diminishes your role. So think about that. This is where folks, where you talk about dual diagnosis, This is where you have folks who self-medicate because they feel this angst, they feel this thing that's really warring with them, where they want to be this person that contributes, they want to be this person that's doing all of the things that help their family and their community prosper. But everything that they try to do, it seems like a sabotage. You look at, and I'm going to bring it up, you probably didn't expect me to do this. Look at our superintendent in Broward County Schools. Stand-up gentleman. After the incident over there in a very affluent community, a target was on his back. So no matter what this guy did, folks will not be satisfied until he was gone. Well, they achieved it. But imagine the mental effect that has on that individual. And this is an individual who was at the highest level in the school system in Broward County. Imagine as a father, as a husband, as an individual, how that affects him. And for Black men, we deal with that on a continual basis, as Brother Robert said, over and over again. How do you function daily when you got a big target on your back?
Literally. And Brother Roberts, I never will forget when you spoke at the lectureship a couple of years ago, and you talked about, and it's something, it's interesting you said that a lot of, when it comes to mental illness, a lot of people don't know that they're sick.
Right.
And when you think about the impact of racism and systemic racism and the impact it's had on us as Black people and Black men in general, a lot of times people don't realize the impact that it has, on just trying to survive, trying to live when, as Reuben Roberts said, you have a target on your back, and that's something that's not easy to cope with. And so when we talk about not knowing, that we're sick when it comes to mental health and mental illness, what are some of the manifestations? What are some of the signs and the symptoms that a man may be experiencing, or that you may see in a man that may be an indicator that something is going on, that he's not well mentally? What are some of those indicators? Ruben, you want to start us out?
Yeah, I know there are numerous indicators. And I think that what was said by Reuben, the other Reuben, that just sounds so funny, just said the other Reuben, was so critical, because it's hard for me to correct something if I don't know it's present. And the truth of the matter is, as been stated, a lot of us don't know we're sick. And as Reuben said, listen, we're all, C.S. Lewis put it this way, we're all bent towards evil. So because we are bent towards evil, we are all gonna be in a continual state of trying to reconcile, trying to maintain, trying to correct this mental health state that I have. Our mental health is in a fallen state. That's the reason why we need God. We need a supreme, we need a supreme being. I'm not gonna get stuck there, but one of the things that we have to do is we have to educate. Education is important because a lot of people just don't know. And I can't tell you the number of people that I've encountered, brothers, sisters, that don't know, and they pass that on perpetually to their children. So what is seen as abnormal in society becomes their normal. And so when they get out into society and those behaviors, they're exhibiting those behaviors, excuse my children, they're exhibiting those behaviors such as anger. They're flying off at the drop of a dime. They're easily frustrated. They self-medicate, drink, smoking, whatever it may be. They're in and out of relationship, no stability across their life. But that's all they know. So Ivan Pavlov conditioning theory would say, our minds are conditioned a certain way based on what is instilled in us and what is normalized in our environments, especially at an early age. So that is carried over into adulthood. Brother Dan says this way all the time: what you don't transform, you transmit. So a lot of times we're transmitting all of these maladaptive behaviors, all of these negative behaviors across to our adulthood because they're not dealt with in the childhood. And so education awareness is big. I'm big on awareness and education. That's a start.
You know, Antoine, I want to kind of deal direct with you. In your book, you chronicle your experiences, and I believe starting middle school, you talk about high school. What was your experience like dealing with mental health, dealing with mental illness? Can you kind of give us a little background about yourself and your experience?
Definitely. I was well, I'll give you more of a summary, then I'll kind of lead up to what I'm going to say. I was actually diagnosed in 2018 with paranoid schizophrenia. I was in and out of a mental institution. I was cutting myself. I was ripping pages out the Bible. I was cursing God, and a lot of that's kind of the climax. But that wasn't the beginning. There was a leading up to it, and so many times we see people at their climax, but we don't really realize there were years and years of trauma and pain and distrust and dishonesty that actually transpired. Um, and so I'm even working on my workbook, and I'm saying in my workbook, in 2008 wasn't when bondage started. Bondage started when I was in middle school. Bondage started when I started accepting lies about myself that were not true. Bondage started when I began to become proud and arrogant. Bondage started when I didn't know how to process or wouldn't process how I was thinking. And so bondage really starts in the mind. But like we say, if we don't know we are in that place, how can we fix it? But even at a younger age, I started to believe that I was very unattractive because I had gained weight, about 30 pounds or so. And my father actually came up to me and said, Antoine, I got a good looking son, I got a handsome son. And because of my lack of mental health and positive perspective of myself, uh, I started to cry because I didn't believe the truth. And until we have a healthy perspective of who we are as men, women, and people, it doesn't matter what other people say about us, we're going to keep crying. We're going to keep saying, I'm not worthy. And until we change the trajectory in our own minds about ourselves and love ourselves the way God loves us, then we can really change. My own mental health started to even cause me, I write it in my book, that I even rejected my father because of that low self-esteem. And so when you got a person that has low self-esteem and lack of love for themselves, they start to reject the love of others and the support of others because they feel like they're not worthy of such. And so it just continued to climax and climax until that boiling point years later.
And Antoine, I know you have a lot to share, man. I want to continue to, and you can share this in the chat, how people can get a copy of your book, just sharing your story. And I just appreciate you, man, for your knowledge and for your wisdom and for your desire to help people that are struggling currently. And that's important for us to remember, because a lot of times we don't realize that young people deal with mental health issues as well.
Exactly.
There are many young people struggling with mental illness. And sometimes, what are some of the ways, I guess I'll pose as a question, how do we miss mental illness when it comes to young people, young men in general? How do we miss that? And how does it show up?
Yeah, I think one thing as a parent, most parents really don't really pay. Sometimes I ain't gonna say don't know, but don't pay attention. Even with mine, my parents were very shocked when they read the letter I wrote that I wanted God to kill me because I was ugly. And some parents just don't know the symptoms. Reclusiveness. Sometimes your child may have a certain habit that they love to do, and they stop doing it cold turkey. They're staying isolated a lot. They may be overeating or under eating. They may not be socializing with certain people anymore. or they may give off certain hints or subliminal messages that they may do it in a joking way, or say I'm ugly, or I'm not worth it, or try to, jokingly joke about it. But yeah, sarcasm. But you got to pay attention to those things. And my dad always taught me observation. If we observe people, are they deterring from their normal routine? If they're changing, their energy is changing, the way they talk, verbalization is changing. Those are key points you really need to pay attention to. And so when parents don't, have those conversations with their children, it can be diabolical. It can be diabolical.
Can I add something?
Go ahead.
I want to say to you, man, this panel that you assembled is awesome. The first thing I want to say to you is that what Brother Thurston just shared with you is like 100% on point from a perspective of where he's been through. Now, I want you to also understand is, do you know what the number one misdiagnosis is for Black men? Schizophrenia.
Mm.
The number one misdiagnosis for Black men and women is schizophrenia.
Wow.
So one of the things that we have to understand is what he's talking about when you hear him talking about from an early age, and what we don't always tie it into. We use the term PTSD, right? PTSD is normalized as post-traumatic stress disorder. I call it post-traumatic slave disorder.
Right.
And I want you to understand that this stems back from 1619. When you're a Black kid, think about it. When you're a Black kid growing up in the inner city, the police doesn't mean the same thing to you as it does to a white kid growing up in a more affluent community. Yeah. When you're a Black kid, you've seen the doll exams where the tests that they've done, where they use the white dolls and the Black dolls. When you're a Black kid, you automatically are trained, and this is social conditioning, which is a part of your mental health and well-being. You're trained that Black is wrong, Black is evil, Black is ugly. You hear what the brother said, that I thought that I was ugly, even though my father was telling me I have a handsome son. So I want you to understand what societal impact has, what that social conditioning has on a person's mental psyche. It is so powerful and so pervasive. And I just got to commend, because everything that all of the panelists are saying is right on point. But we have to understand how these societal and social norms and social conditioning have an impact on us. And we need to be able to try to make sure that we work and inform people to correct some of these things that in terms of how we view ourselves and view our communities and such. I just feel that this is just a much needed conversation. I'm so sorry if I get too emotional about this.
That's okay. You're on point.
You're good. To go along with what's been said, I got to quote Malcolm. Malcolm X said, "You can't stick a dagger in the back of a man 9 inches and pull it out 6 and say he's okay." He's still bleeding. We're still bleeding. In the field of, and it's interesting, in the field of psychology, sociology, people are willing to accept the fact that there are some long-term effects of people who have been abused, except when it comes to African Americans. That's what's so fascinating. That's what's so interesting about it all. We can look at everyone else that's been abused, and there's long-term effects, generation to generation. When it comes to African American, no, get over it. Get over what, man? What in the world are you talking about? And the field can accept it. We understand that, okay, people get abused, they pass it on to their children, children. We sit around in the field of psychology, we do those transgenerational analysis and look back several generations and say, this is why, and all that nice little stuff. When it comes to African Americans, it's like, no, that doesn't apply to you. And maybe I'm the only one feel that way, but it seems I
don't think so.
Seem like they get amnesia, man. It's just like,
Talk,
What
Doc.
do you think has happened to us and continuously happened to us?
Exactly.
The process of dehumanization has not stopped.
Yeah.
You're still doing it. I'm not crazy, man. You're still doing it. Absolutely, you are. And that's the field that we're in. That when it comes to African Americans, it's like, So yeah, so we're still dealing with it. We're still dealing, and from parents' perspective, the implication, and I'll be quiet in just a second. The implication of a child with a mental illness implies that I'm defected as a parent. So I'm not going to accept you, Brian, as my little boy that's got something wrong with him because of what it implies. The implication is that there is something wrong with me. That something wrong genetically and whatever with me, that I have a child that's schizophrenic. What does that say about me? Especially when they start looking around and say, isn't this biologically inherited? And I'll start looking around. Sometimes it has just as much to do with the parent and the implication of it as it does with the child.
Yeah.
So the parent keep putting it on the back burner, say, oh no, that's not my child. The child needs help. No, my child doesn't need counseling. My child doesn't need this. All my child needs is with us, all my child needs is a spanking, and that's all my child needs. And so it keep pushing it on the back burner. So the implication can be just as much with the parent as it is with the child.
Brother Roberts, you make me think of something I just read last night about Toni Braxton. I guess her oldest son just graduated from high school. He's on his way to college. And she was saying that when he was born or when he was younger, he was diagnosed with autism. And she said she blamed herself. She was like, what did I do wrong, to cause my child to have this problem? And so that goes in line with what you were just saying, that a lot of parents, they don't want to acknowledge the mental illness because they believe it says something about them, and makes them a bad parent. So where do we begin, to get that healing and the help that we need when mental illness is an issue? What should a man do if he is struggling mentally? Where does he begin to find the help that he needs?
Well, I'll start out by saying, because this is like the panelists said, this is a great discussion, and it's so multi-layered, Brother Campbell. It's so complex, like Doc was saying earlier. Oftentimes, and you as a preacher know this, Brother Campbell, oftentimes whenever a family member gets sick, whenever Pookie little cousin done been sent to rehab, been Baker acted, whatever it may be, been Marshman acted, who's the first person that they usually call? The preacher. They don't call the police all the time. They don't call the auntie. The preacher is usually the first person that's called. And in a way, the preacher becomes this state of triage for dealing with the family issues. And so a lot of times, especially in the Black community, we're talking about the Black community, especially in the Black community, the church has always been a safe haven, years historically. But in the Black church, we have not taught and normalized the topic of mental health. We have stigmatized it because based on everything that has been shared, how society deems us. I mean, we can go into just even how there aren't even nowhere near as many resources in the Black community as there are in the white community. Exactly. I don't have time to stay there, but the resources are limited. And so the church has become our safe haven. And so I believe that even in the approach with the church, when we talk about how can we help individuals with mental health, brothers, our ministry has to be threefold. We have to have a teaching, a healing, and a delivering type of ministry. Our ministry and the messages and the education of what the church gives to community. It has to normalize mental health. Oftentimes, and I say this now, hush, when we see somebody that's on the street struggling, and we know they're not in their right mind, we know that they're out of their mind. And all the time we label as schizophrenic. We're quick to name label somebody schizophrenic. And that person may very well just not be taking a medication. They may be intoxicated, whatever have you. But based on how society has deemed us to see that person, we deem them as mental health and we deem that as mental health, but we don't see ourselves having mental health issues. So there's this sense of normalization that has to come about even through the church and then also in our families. Again, education awareness is critical.
And Ruben, you mentioned, it kind of leads to my next one. When we talk about getting help, and maybe you all can add this part in there. What can families, churches, and communities do to help men to be healthy mentally? You know, so where can a man find help, and how can families, churches, and communities help men who are struggling mentally? Brother Roberts, I believe you wanted to share something.
Oh yeah, of course we have the Paraclete Center that our church did a analysis, and it's sitting in the Black community, which is the church, and we do that, and it's been really good in helping African Americans understand that hey, we all struggle. The reason we call it the Paraclete because we want people to know, hey, we're not so dogmatic or so perfect that we think that we know it all. We're just gonna join hands and walk side by side with each other and kind of bring this thing to God and just kind of figure this thing out here. So it's the reason, that's why we named it the Paraclete Center, an humble expression that we're just gonna walk by you, walk side by side with you. Just want to help you along, and that's one way of doing what you're doing here. Right now, I think churches can come together and have a therapist, that they can just refer people to. I think that's good. Things along those lines that we can do, and have more and more seminars that's geared toward African American men. I was in one last week that was really, really good, and because African American men, and I see a lot of African American men, because we struggle not with just problems, we struggle with our problems too. And being able to talk about our problems and our struggles is really important, that we can do it in a really safe environment. And just being safe. Not only that, I think we need to actually help preachers be able to deal with some of the stuff too. I got several preachers I'm seeing now. I mean, right now they're struggling. Preachers are struggling with all kind of depression and I've had a couple that called me within the last couple months that was struggling with suicide.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's when preachers are going through it.
Yeah.
And trying to keep it together. You know how you try to keep that front in front of everybody. I learned years ago to stop doing that. I just say, hey, I had a bad week last week. Let me tell y'all about it before I start the sermon. I stopped trying to do that. I say, hey, look, I've been here at West Eastland for 25 years. After 25 years, you know some of my faults anyway. It goes back to the Jahari window, you know some things about me I don't even know about me. So, used to front it anymore. Here it is. So yeah, and I think those are the kind of things, helping preachers, because preachers are under a lot of stresses. Yeah, they really are. Yeah, and helping them understand that they've got a friend. The whole, just bringing it together with seminars and what you're doing right now, I think is very beneficial.
Yeah. That reminds me of a conversation Ruben Holloman and I were having earlier about the pandemic. As a preacher, this particular, ministering during a pandemic and living, if you think it's been a struggle for everybody else, imagine being a preacher trying to minister and serve people who are going through and you're going through the same thing. So this particular time has been stressful for a lot of folks, and it comes out in different ways. Antoine, I want to ask you, how were you able to? What was the turning point for you in your struggle and your journey to healing? What was the turning point for you?
With my specific experience, and I can speak only for mine, part of my experience was I was actually exposed to witchcraft, which made what I was going through mentally a whole lot worse and took it to a whole other level. But it was an old school revival. I got to a place where I really wanted to live for God and live righteously before Him. And in this revival, the anointing was there, the Spirit of God was moving, and demons began to be cast out. And God dwelt me with the Holy Spirit, and I was saved. But I always say, after I was freed, I had to maintain my freedom. Just because we are free doesn't mean we can live recklessly or irresponsibly with the freedom God gives us. And even now, I've been preaching for about 7 years. I'm an elder. I have my doctorate in theology, and I have a counselor. I do have a counselor because I feel as though there are things I can do on my own, but I can't do it without uh, a Christian counselor that I do have. And I've done 3 sessions with her. She's phenomenal. Dr. Sandra Anderson, phenomenal woman, and she's prophetic in the gifts of the Spirit. So she uses both the spiritual and the psychological together, and she brings about great results. And that counseling aspect, not just the preaching aspect, it's really what really dealt with some root things in me that I didn't even know I had, that I didn't resolve years prior to. And so if we can take both the psychological and the spiritual and put them together like my counselor has, we can have amazing results because we're not just being overly spiritual and not just being overly natural and psychological. We need both. We need both. And I can tell you even now, my mindset is completely different than it was 2, 3, 4 months ago. Yeah. And pastors and anyone, if you can get someone that's both spiritual and natural and using both together, we can do some amazing things. And that's what we have to present to the people, not just preach to them and give them Bible, but what else can you give me that's applicable to me in my life and what I'm going through?
I said something a couple of weeks ago. I posted on my page. It's okay to have Jesus and a therapist.
Amen.
They don't contradict each other. They're not in conflict.
They're not in competition with each other, huh?
Right.
And I'll say this too, Pastor. I did an interview with a pastor, and she didn't want to answer her calling because she was diagnosed with a mental illness, because she felt like she wasn't worthy. And when we and her did interview on my podcast, it was such a healthy perspective for other people just to hear another pastor saying, "Hey, I do take medication. I do have a mental illness, but I'm still functioning. I'm still walking in my calling. I'm still doing what God called me to do, and I'm still living a productive life, even though I still have some mishaps and so forth. But having a mental illness or trauma of any kind doesn't disqualify me from living the best life I can live on earth."
Amen.
And brother Campbell, if I can, one of the things that's instilled in us from when we're young is that we can't show any signs of weakness.
Yeah, exactly.
Any signs of weakness. You got to be strong, especially if you're a man and you're a Black man. You got to be strong. And so the misnomer is that mental health is a weakness. It is not a weakness. It is a condition that everybody goes through. Yeah. Everybody. There's no one that's exempt from dealing with any type of mental. Every one of us deal with this. But what we're conditioned as kids in the Black community, I remember as a kid, if I got into a fight and if I didn't win, my mama sent me back out there. You better go back out there until you win. You understand? It was never about lose. You could not lose. You had to be strong. And if you're a man, if you're considered to be a Black man, you have to show that sign of strength. And when you talk about mental health issues, this is why this is so important. People need to know that that is not a weakness. It is not a weakness. It is just a condition that we have to figure out how we can create better coping strategies to deal with whatever that illness that we're dealing with. Just like when you go to you got a cold, you take your vitamin C. That's the same thing. It's not a weakness. And that's the thing that's the misnomer that we really have to that's pervasive in our community. And we really need to get the message out there so people can see it in a different light.
Hey, Ruben, I appreciate what you said. for the past, I guess, 13, 14 years, I've been dealing with our service members and their families. Well, I've been embedded with infantry and special forces.
Mhm.
And so over a period of years, it's just dealing with people that are just, they're trained to kill.
Mm.
So when they come to therapy, that's definitely in our military. That's a sign of weakness. So Ruben, when they walk into therapy, I say, look, I said, this is not what you think. I said, I want to show you how to enhance your critical thinking skills. And they go, really? It's almost like, it's okay now.
Great reframe. Great
Yeah,
reframe.
I said, I want to help you enhance your critical thinking skills. They say, really? I say, oh, yeah. I said, it'll help you even as an officer. It'll help you. And they just get, really? I said, yeah, oh, man. I said, forget all that counseling stuff. I said, oh, I ain't doing that stuff. I said, I'm going to help you enhance your critical thinking. So and I use that a lot, especially with African-American men. I said, hey, look, I'm just going to be your coach. I said, Michael Jordan had a coach. I said, I'm just going to, I said, man, look, most of the things you're doing right. I just want to teach you how to arch it a little more. That's all. Real, forget all this counseling stuff, man. I don't do that stuff. I don't like that stuff either, man.
And Brother Roberts, you bring me to our last topic. What you talk about the coaching and the critical thinking. One of the audience members asked earlier about self-care and what are some things a man can do to maintain good mental health. What are some things that we can do to take care of ourselves mentally? And each one of you can deal with that if you like. What are some things? What can a man do to take care of himself mentally?
Well, I like to look at it holistically. As we said at the top, I believe that there has to be a spiritual grounding. There has to be a mental maintenance care and physical care. One of the most, well, I put it like this: food is the most abused drug. Exercise is the most underutilized weapon. When there are many studies that show that the benefits of exercise. Brother Cameron, you know me, I'm big on working out. I'm big on fitness. And especially when we talk about eye blacking, that would be a whole nother conversation. But our lack of physical self-care is correlated with our lack of mental health care. And a lot of times the just basic simplicity of things. If getting the gym membership, going to work out, establishing a church home, having some spiritual grounding. We live in a society that's getting away from God, and that's presenting a whole another challenge. But you have to have some kind of spiritual grounding. God has to be in the picture, because if God is not the picture, then you become your own God, and then that leads to other issues. And so God has to remain in the picture. And then like you said, having Jesus, it's okay to have Jesus in the therapist. I think even Proverbs 11:14 will verify that, where it says, where there's no counselor, the people fall. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. And so a lot of times we're not safe. We don't have that security within because we don't have nobody to talk to. We don't have anybody to lean on. We don't have anybody physically to relate to. And like Ruben and Mr. Benjamin was saying earlier, we are taught in our community and growing up as men that, you go down there, get your coat back. And if you lose again, you're going to come home, you're going to get another whooping. You're going to lose again. So we're conditioned a certain way and we take on this mentality that has to be undone and replaced with that of self-care. It's okay to cry. It's okay for a man to show emotions. As a matter of fact, I fear a man who doesn't show no emotion. I'm more concerned about that man.
Good stuff. Jordan asked a question here. Why is showing, and I think you may have hit on it, why is showing signs of weakness or vulnerability for African-American young men abandoned or rejected from most Black families and households? Why is showing signs of weakness and vulnerability for African-American young men abandoned or rejected in most Black families and households?
Because that's all we got. For years, that's all we were known for, our strength, our virility. We don't have the finances. It's not like we could go into our pocket. You see, when you come from a community where your finances, you don't have to show strength. You can buy strength, from other people. You understand? So when this thing that you are known to be prominent for, you look at football, who are the baddest football players out there? They're Black athletes. You look at basketball. And so we are known to be these virile people who are strong, have this physical strength. And if you don't have that characteristic, then you're looked at as subpar. So people don't look at us as human, right? They look at us as superhuman from a physical standpoint, but they don't look at us from that emotional and academic standpoint. We have to understand that we're people too, and we don't have to live up to anyone else's expectations of us. We have the ability to feel, we have the ability to care, and this is what happens in our relationships. We were conditioned. You want to know what's going on in Black male and female relationship? We were conditioned to have multiple partners. When they took you from one slave camp and put you in another slave camp to sire children because you were this big buck man, you were conditioned not to have them. When they said that the woman who's receiving social services of welfare can't have her husband or her male partner in the house with her, you're conditioned for that man to just go from one place to place. And so that's what's going on with us. And we are disjointed when that comes. When we come into the knowledge of self, when we come into the knowledge of who we are as a human being, and we understand that we have all the abilities of feeling, of caring, of being able to produce and provide, and we accept ourselves as a full human being, not what society says that we are, then that's when you see that we progress. So in order for us to overcome, we have to have awareness. That's the first thing that we have to do, be awareness of who we are. You're not weak because you have a niche in your armor. The key is to be aware and have to be able to identify, okay, I realize that I'm doing this. And then the other thing is habits. So one of the things that you see is that we self-medicate. And self-medicate, I want you to understand, it doesn't have to be with drugs. People self-medicate with gambling. You go into the Hard Rock.
Yeah.
You go, you go to whatever. People self-medicate in so many different ways to make themselves feel better. Mm-hmm. So when you're doing these things, you understand that this is all a part of what's happening with your psyche, your mental health, and your well-being, mm-hmm. your self-view, your perspective of self. Mm-hmm. You follow me? That's where the mental health thing comes in. But understand, and this is the thing that we all have to really, really buy into, is that we all have concerns that about who we are. That is a normal thing. Mm-hmm. That's a normal thing. People have concerns about their sexuality. People have concerns about all aspects of their lives. But if you feel like you're going to be rejected, if you reveal that, then you hold it. And then what you do is you internalize it. And all of these things that you got going on that you're internalizing, that you don't feel as a Black man, I can talk about, is going to really have a strong impact on you. It'll show up in terms of abuse, of drugs, physical abuse in your relationships, just jumping in and out of relationships, lack of stability, like the brother said about not having a spiritual base. That whole thing that you do to support that lifestyle for who you are, so that you can just live with yourself, so that you can just live and look in the mirror at who you are as a human being. What we have to do is, just like Brother Robert said, get away from the mask. And he said it. His congregation, hey, you guys probably know me better than I know myself. Yeah, you got to get away from the mask and just say, hey, this is who I am. Mm-hmm. Accept me as I am. Yeah. This is who I am. And that's one of the things that we have to be able to do to really begin to grow and prosper and really make progress as far as our mental health is concerned. Stop masking stuff and just be who you are, you know, and let people accept you for who you are.
Brother Reuben Roberts, I'm gonna thank you for that, because that's gonna bring our conversation to a close for tonight. And I think that's a good note for us to have some final thoughts on. And I want you gentlemen on the panel here to think for a moment. If you were talking to a young man, a boy, or even an older man who was frustrated, overwhelmed, maybe even contemplating suicide, what would you say to that man, to that brother who is at his, you know, on his last nerve, so to speak, to help him to get through or move forward and not give up? You can take a minute, a few seconds to ponder that one. What would you say to that man, that boy?
Well, since I've been in all those cases, I would basically be talking to myself. And I would definitely say, you know, while I was going through it, I want to relate to that person. I've been there. I've slit my wrists. I've overdosed on medication. And matter of fact, when I tried to commit suicide, I even told God I didn't want to die. So I know this. You have sometimes we have the right intention but the wrong methods in bringing it about. You know, sometimes we think suicide is the only means, but it's not. And I would just say to that person, God still has a plan for your life. God has a purpose. And don't give up on God. Don't give up on yourself. And don't give up on the process that you're going through. The process is really what's going to make you a better, stronger individual.
Right. Any other final thoughts, gentlemen?
You know, I just want to say ditto. I mean, seriously, I mean, I want to say ditto to all three of my comrades here. I just want to say ditto to them. I think putting it all together is the person sitting in front of you. I think it's important for me to remember something, and that, hey, whatever it is, it's here right now with me. And to show that person as much care and as much love as I can. And I did that with soldiers all the time. And that's real. I mean, that's real. The suicide is real. And it's very much real. So you're there in front of that person. And I think what has been said tonight is to let that person realize, to try to understand that, you know, tomorrow. And one thing about tomorrow, and from a research perspective, you can get that person, get to the sun coming up. I mean, let's say, okay, I know it's painful, it's hurtful. And what I would tell myself, I know it's painful. I say, look, you're hurting right now. Can you give me to the morning for us to talk about it? Will you give me to the morning? Are there any guns around that need to be removed? Are there any other medications, whatever that the person may use? Can we remove them from you? All I'm asking is one day. Tomorrow.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Brother Campbell, one of the things I really like to use is, I like to use the metaphor of a house that's completely just dark. You don't know where to go. You just feel like you're by yourself. You just feel like it's nobody around. You can't see even what's in front of you. It's dark. But the beautiful thing about darkness is, if darkness is present, light has to be somewhere. If you could just feel the wall to find a light switch, all you need to find is just one. That one light will give hope for finding the rest of the light in the house. And so there is a light that's still in you because you're still living. The light switch is just turned off right now. If we could just find that one light switch, which will open up the rest of the illumination that's within, then we can get somewhere. And so just find that one light switch. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy has to come. It has to come.
All right, we're gonna start preaching here. You got some preachers, you'll get stirred up here in a minute. Ruben Roberts, you got anything else to close out? You the last one?
Yeah, just brief. I just want to say to anybody that's struggling with any type of mental illness or where you're not, sure about yourself, where you are in your life right now. If you feel that you're not living up to the abilities that you should be living up to, if you feel that people don't respect you or that sort of thing, I want to simply say to you that you are enough. Write it down, put it on your mirror. You are enough. And if you don't believe so, one of the things is if you're living and you can hear my voice, you have purpose. You may not know what your purpose is, but you're here for a reason. Nobody's here on this earth for no reason. You're here for a reason. You have purpose and you are enough. That's all I want to say.
That's it. That's it. That's the period. That's the exclamation point. Gentlemen, again, I want to thank each one of you for blessing us tonight with this critical conversation. Thank all of our attendees, those who are watching or live online, and those who are here in the Zoom room. All of our ADEMU alumni, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. All of our friends of ADEMU, we appreciate you for joining us tonight. Don't forget to join us next Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. where our next conversation will be about relationships and marriage. Relationships and marriage. And so we're going to be talking about that issue next week, specifically from a men's perspective, a male perspective, relationships and marriage. So please make sure you join us next Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Ruben Roberts, Benjamin Roberts, Antoine Thurston, Ruben Holloman, Rubens Roberts, and Antoine. Thank you guys so much. Y'all have a blessed evening. Good night, everybody.
Bless you.